Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we're back in War Thunder looking at another devblog. This is the Piaggio P.108B, the Imperial Eagle. It is an Italian 4-engine bomber. Not a ton of them were made, around about 50, whereas a lot of them were destroyed during the war down to a lot of issues. I think it's something that should be in the game. It looks like we're going to be getting two variants, so let's go through this devblog. In War Thunder, the P.108B will perform best at low to medium altitudes, reaching a top speed of 419 km per hour at 4,000 meters. However, for being such a lumbering beast, the aircraft is also quite durable and agile, able to withstand a 6G turn without breaking apart. Besides being able to deliver 3.5 tons of bombs on land-based targets, it is also capable of carrying 3 torpedoes underneath the fuselage, making it a force to be reckoned with even when engaging naval targets. One of the standout features of the P-108 is most certainly the defensive armament, featuring remote-controlled dual high-caliber machine gun turrets on the outer engines, as well as single high-caliber machine gun turrets in the ventral and nose section of the fuselage. Players are already familiar with such technology in late war US bombers, such as the B-29 and the A-26. However, it was actually the P-108 that was one of the first aircraft to pioneer this type of defensive armament. So talk about remote control guns, something that you also see on the ME-410, one of the machines to pioneer this as well. So, you don't need a ton of gunners in this thing, or you don't need as many guns as you do people, which means that if a bomber is lost, you're not losing a ton of crew, which is a good thing. The fact that it can carry 3 torpedoes is really interesting. I'm pretty sure that that may be the most that any aircraft can carry. Compared to in the game. I don't think there is an aircraft in game right now which actually can carry 3 torpedoes. I might be wrong about this, but the ones that I think of which can carry a lot of torpedoes, I'm looking at the Wellington. The Wellington can carry 2 torpedoes. The new Italian aircraft that they've talked about can only really carry 1, apart from the bomber which they just announced, which was the was it the BA? No, the Kant Z could carry 2, I believe, but the BA-88 could only carry 1, and there are a few other aircraft in-game which can carry 2, but I'm pretty sure there isn't one which can carry 3, so that's something new. When we look at its speed and maneuverability and everything like that, I get a sense that this thing is very similar to the PE-8. Maybe the PE-8 is not as maneuverable as it, but when the speed, the size, the bomb load, everything like that, it's very similar to the PE-8. If we look at the speeds, the PE-8 is slightly faster, very slightly faster. If we look at the tonnage that this thing can throw, so 3,500 kilograms, then if we look at the PE-8, it has, well, slightly more. If you want to count the 5,000 kilogram bomb, and then it has the 4,000 kilogram bombs. So yeah, it has slightly more smashing power than this new Italian will. And then we look at maneuverability. Well, I think the way that it's described here, the P-108B should have more maneuverability than this, and also it has the extension of the torpedoes. At the same time, this Italian aircraft does fall victim to the Italian ways, where even though it has quite a lot of guns in its defensive armaments, they're all Breda Safats. So 5.5-inch Breda Safats, which are 12.7s, and 2 7.7s Breda Safats. Now I'm sure it could have more, but that seems to be the standard which is on this thing, at least on one of the variants, which has the front gun. We'll get into that in a little bit. So the PE-8 has some advantages, such as the defensive armament, such as bomb load, whereas this thing is a little bit slower, can carry excess torpedoes, has, I suppose, more guns, if they're not as powerful, and can still carry a decent bomb load. So maybe comparing it to the P.A. would be a good thing. It can also turn slightly better. In the upcoming major updates, we will include both production versions of the P.108B, the Series 1 and Series 2. As the second production series was adapted for nighttime operations, this led to the removal of the nose turret in favor of additional fuel supplies and increased armor protection. So that's why you have the two different models that you may have seen in the pictures that I've been showing on the screen. The one model basically has a duck face, I think it's safe to say, where the turret on the front has been covered over by what would be extra metal, extra shielding, which would mean that the people on the inside would be able to survive a bit better if it was shot. There's no need for a front turret if you're doing night missions. Generally, there was no need for many turrets if you're doing night missions. Like with the British, they were much more worried about anti-air fire than they were fighters. They sometimes did run into fighters, but generally they were much more worried about the other stuff. And that's basically the same thing with this when we look at the nighttime variant. Strip out some of the turrets, add in some more armor protection for flak and stuff like that, and hope that it survives and hope that no fighters come after it. Generally, one of the issues that means that variant will run into is the fact that we don't really have that in War Thunder. Nighttime battles are generally not a thing, and that's basically down to the fact that you can screw around with the post-FX settings. I will do a video on that one day, just to show people who like nighttime battles why we don't have as many as you may think, because it does bring a few issues if we look at the graphical settings. But yeah, the stuff like nighttime fighters are not really compensated for in this game in any way. Generally, the ones which are successful in the games are the ones which were very similar to the daytime counterparts, but it seems like this version of the P108 is just going to straight have a lower BR because it has lower armaments. It doesn't really have anything extra apart from some extra armor protection, which generally around the BR of 4, which I think this thing is going to sit at, isn't really going to help it that much. So we'll have to see. A new avian behemoth is making its way to War Thunder in Update 1.69 as the first heavy bomber of the much anticipated Italian research tree. Adjust your bombing sights and be prepared to pilot a unique addition to the game's aircraft roster. See you there. I suppose it is unique. The fact that it can carry 3 torpedoes is pretty cool. You know, it's the first heavy bomber that we are getting for Italy, and it's probably the one which is the most well known, at least. Not down to these variants, but another one I'll talk about. It had, as I said, around 50 of them made, and even though it did suffer heavy losses, it did see combat. It did run into a lot of the old Italian issues, though. When it comes to engine power, when it comes to defensive armaments, not so good. But 3.5 tons, or 3,500 kilos of bombs, it's going to put a dent somewhere, and I think this thing would suit around 4.0. I mean, we have the PE8 of 4.3, and it generally is better, the PE8. I mean, it is slightly faster than this thing, or at least I believe it will be slightly faster. If not, it will be slightly slower, the PE8. So it's very, very close, but the PE8 can carry a hell of a lot more bombs, and it has better defensive armaments. So therefore, I would probably put this thing around 4.0, maybe 3.7 for the duck version. Something that a lot of people are clamoring for. There was an anti-tank, an anti-ship variant of this thing built. And it was, if I can find the variant's name, it was the P108A anti-glieri, maybe? The anti-shipping version. There was one of these built, and it had a 102mm in it. There is a reason why only one of them was built. It didn't really work very well. So if you want to in-game have fun, it being very much like the duck that we have in-game with the 75, which is incredibly hard to maneuver and stuff like that, especially after firing the shot. Take that and then amplify it by about 5, because this thing isn't that fast either. And once you fire the shot, it should, you know, push you back really hard. and being able to move this thing around is going to be incredibly hard to do. So we're looking at a big beast for the Italians, around probably 4. They don't actually say a rank or BR right now, which is kind of interesting. But there's no way that this thing even matches up to the late tier British bombers or the late tier American bombers. It does not have the payload that the British bombers do, and it does not have the defensive armament that the B-17s do, which sit around 5.3. Also, the B-17s are about 100 kilometers faster than this thing. You got to remember, in all extents and purposes, this is like a 1939 aircraft. And I understand the B-17 was as well, but the variants that we have in game are not 1939 aircraft. They are slightly improved. And since the P.108, you know, it only lasted until 1943, because that's when Italy surrendered, and it still took heavy losses. So even in the war, this thing wasn't great. It wasn't seen as this behemoth such as the B-17 and the British bombers. Even though the B-17 did lose a lot of its type, it did not lose what's 22 out of 24. It's at least more than 90%. I'll just check for now. But the thing is, I knew this was going to be here. Even though there wasn't a ton of them made, the reason why it's here is because they don't really have another option, to be quite honest. So the death toll of the initial P.108 was 92%. So you had a 92% over about 2 years of if you're going to survive or not. And that's why there was only 2 left. Isn't that a bit worrying? I'd say that's slightly worrying if you're trying to fly one of these things. But I really don't see why this wouldn't be in the game. It is nice to see it in the game, and it's not going to be as good as people think. It's going to be around 4.0. It's going to be slow as hell. It's going to be a PE8 with less guns. That's about it, and more killing ships capabilities, which may be useful going into the future, you know, with ships coming and stuff. But for right now, it's not that useful. It's just gonna. And it's also going to be interesting to see how good these torpedoes are, because that's obviously going to be something that is going to be very important. Even though the Wellington can carry 2 torpedoes, let's just see. I think the Mark 1C late I will use as an example. Yeah, it can carry 2 Mark 12 torpedoes. You have to be going at 281 kilometers an hour or lower at a drop altitude range of less than 105 meters. That's basically dropping out of the air at 105 meters for a Wellington. Well, if it's the same for this thing, then even though it has 3 torpedoes, it's not going to be very useful. But anyway, I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be interesting to see what comes after this in the bomber line for the Italians. I'm pretty sure this should be the only heavy bomber they should get. But, well, we'll see if there's anything. We'll see if there's anything interesting when it comes to the prototypes and stuff. I'm sure they'll throw stuff in. I hope you have a wonderful day. And if no more devblogs come out tomorrow, I will get around to the T-55A. I've put it on the back burner because I'm just working out what I feel about it. Have a nice day.